Hi, my name is Gillian Einstein, and you're watching the UC Daily.
Welcome, Dr. Einstein. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited that you can come here and chat with the UC community.
My pleasure, really.
So can you start by telling the UC community a little bit about yourself?
I'm a professor in the psychology department, and I'm also the Wilfred and Joyce Posluns Chair in Women's Brain Health and Aging. And as you can tell from the name of my chair, I'm really interested in women's brain health, and I'm very interested in aging. So I try to understand why more women than men have Alzheimer's disease, and I study women at midlife, so I can understand the earliest, the beginnings of any kind of brain changes that might lead women to go on to have Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, interesting. Can you share a little bit more about your work as a faculty member at U of T, maybe some courses that you've taught or you teach?
Sure. When I first came to U of T, I was actually part of a Women's Health Research Institute at Women's College Hospital, but I was appointed at U of T. And as part of that, I started something called the Collaborative Specialization in Women's Health. So it was for graduate students at U of T, and I ran that for 10 years. And one of the courses I taught as part of that was called Gender and Health, where I sort of juxtaposed theoretical readings with readings from the biomedical literature. So probably, I don't know what your major is. What's your major?
Oh, my major, so I did my major in biological sciences, but that was a while ago.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, you might know as somebody who did a major in biological sciences, you could read lots and lots of papers on the biology of the immune system. But there are also people in the social studies of science who have also written about the immune system from a more feminist theoretical point of view, like Donna Haraway. So I would juxtapose a paper like that with a paper on the immune system and get people to really talk about the different perspectives that one really needs in order to understand women's health. And as an undergraduate prof, I taught a course on Alzheimer's disease called Genes, Brain, and Self, which I co-taught with two other professors. One did the genes, one did the self, and I did the brain part. That was really a lot of fun. And that was through human biology. And then for a while I was teaching health psychology in the psychology department, Psych 333. And now mostly I teach a course of my own design called Sex in the Brain, Psych 495, which is about the early literature and the development of the idea of sex differences.
Interesting. Okay, those are some really cool courses. I like what you said of like looking at the different perspectives and combining the different fields of study in some of the courses that you teach. Because yeah, I found that I did my undergrad in biological sciences, and now I'm doing my master's in education. And there's some courses on like health studies within education, and they just take such a different perspective than what I had in my undergrad. And it's cool to see those different things, but you don't necessarily always learn about them. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear that that's the take that you have with that program.
Yeah, well, I really thought in order to understand women's health, because it comes out of what's called second wave feminism, which was very focused on the body and reproductive health, actually, and women taking their health into their own hands, I felt like it was really important to include feminist literature as well as the biology of the body. And I learned so much from that, actually. Every course I teach, I learn something from, so that's fun.
Yeah. So you talked about the collaborative program in women's health. Can you tell us a little bit about how this program came about and what some of the goals of the program are?
Yeah, well, the program came about because the Center for Research in Women's Health, at the time it was at Women's College, they really wanted to host a program that was not just part of Women's College, but was part of the university. So I designed a collaborative program specialization is what they're called now, in women's health that was linked to the Center for Research in Women's Health, but also through, the way collaborative programs work, they bring together different departments and different schools at the university. And so it was quite diverse, but it really brought a wide swath of the university together. And the goal of the program really was multidisciplinarity. It was to teach people interested in women's health that they had to both understand the social and the biological. So we had students from nursing, we had students from English, we had students from religion, we had students from information studies, students from the Institute of Medical Sciences. So, and one year I taught the core course, Gender and Health, in University College. I was able to get a room there, and so the students all came over to University College, which was great.
Nice. How was that? How did you like that experience?
Oh, I really liked it. I have such a fondness for University College because I used to be part of the cognitive science program, and I was so impressed with the undergraduates in the cognitive science program. I think they were just, and probably still are, just amazing students. So self-driven, so intellectually driven that I really liked that. And I've always liked college life.
Yeah, some of our students are pretty involved and really passionate about what they do. So it's always good to connect with that. So as the recipient of the Wilfred and Joyce Posluns Chair in Women's Brain Health and Aging, you've been leading the research on women's brain health. Why is this an important and understudied area of research?
Well, I can't exactly tell you why it's an understudied area of research. It's just, almost all the animal models and most of the clinical trials until recently were done in men and used male animals. So we don't know much about women's brains at this point. And even today, we're still, yesterday, I was on an Alzheimer's Association call about the new drug. I think it's called Amudide. I have to Google it to find out exactly what it's called, but it's the first drug to be authorized by the Federal Drug Agency in the United States to be prescribed for Alzheimer's disease. And I asked the question, were the clinical trials carried out in women as well as men, and were the data disaggregated by sex? And nobody answered my question.
Oh, wow.
So it's still, that's very surprising to me in this day and age. So I can't say why, but I always tell people, oftentimes people use the excuse that it's more expensive because you'd have to include female animals too. And then you might have to include animals at two different stages of the estrus cycle, so it gets more expensive. And another excuse is that, well, it's too complicated because you have to take the estrus cycle into account in animal models, or you have to take the menstrual cycle into account in humans. But I always tell people, if we had just by a fluke started studying females instead of males right from the beginning, and then somebody said to us, oh, you really have to start including men in your models, I would say, no, we can't do that. Males are too simple. It doesn't represent the full range of biological complexity.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So that I think your research is so amazing, and you bring up some really important points. For everyone that looks up to you and is inspired by your career path and the work that you do, how did you get to where you are today, and what advice would you have for UC students?
It was a long and winding road. And, I started off actually as an art history major when I was an undergraduate. And I decided I wanted to understand how people see rather than describe what it is they do see. So I happen to love art history. I still love going to museums and thinking. I'm very visual, thinking about art. I'm still very visually driven. But because I wanted to understand how people see, I ended up going into neuroscience. So it took me a while when all my friends were going to law school and medical school or getting married or, having their path in life very clear to them. I was still taking undergraduate courses so I could qualify to apply to graduate school in neuroscience. But I did, and then I started off studying the visual system. And my undergraduate thesis was my graduate uh, thesis was on actually the projections from a visual part of the brain called the lateral geniculate nucleus to the visual cortex in the cat. So I'm very much a systems neuroscience person, and I think in terms of how different parts of the brain are interconnected. But of course, I don't do vision anymore. I even did a postdoctoral fellowship in vision, but I realized the longer I went on, the more interested I was in a problem that was linked to human health. So I got interested in Alzheimer's disease and never really turned back from that.
Wow, yeah, I think that's really great to hear about. I think a lot of our students and a lot of students will follow a path and think that they're stuck and trapped in it and they can't, follow their passions anymore because, it's too late and all my friends are doing, have started their careers. But you make a really great point of, sticking with it and sticking with your passions because just to see like all the amazing things you've contributed today and where you are today, it makes it well worth it and valuable.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, watching all your friends travel down a well-beaten path and to feel that you're the only one who doesn't know what they're doing with their life. But guess what? You're not the only one who doesn't know what you're doing with your life. And life is long. And as you can tell from my career, I even did science administration in the middle for about 6 years before I was able to come back to doing research at U of T. And I changed from doing animal research to human research. Life is long and you have to follow your passion. You have to follow what's in your heart. And actually, when you do that, I tell my students and students who ask me, how does it all get connected? When you do all these diverse things, well, it all gets connected by you. You're the one who knows why you've taken these different branches, and it's inside you. And you just have to think about, okay, what is it about me that makes all this stuff come together? What is the big question that I'm really interested in that made me go in this direction and that direction? So the most important thing actually is to do something and not to wait until you know what you want to do, because it will all come together if you just really think about who you are and what's important to you.
What is the best way for students to connect with you and if they're interested in, taking some of your courses or have questions or even some of the research that you've done?
Well, they can email me at gillian.einstein@utoronto.ca. I answer my emails.
Awesome. Yes, you definitely do. And we've been trying to encourage students to email, not be afraid to reach out to professors and email them and connect.
Absolutely. And especially if they're psychology students. I mean, there's a tried and true belief in the psychology department that students really benefit from working in a lab and having a lab kind of learning experience, whether it's through an independent project or a thesis or work study. And I'm a big believer in that because it really gives you a different kind of community. When you're an undergraduate, especially at U of T, you're often in really big courses. And not only do you not get to know your professor well, but you should go to office hours. That's my advice to every student listening to this. Go to office hours. We're just sitting there waiting for you to come by. But also, you get to know other students who are in the lab, and it becomes it's a working relationship of the type that you might not have otherwise.
the number of professors that have said, go to office hours. We could definitely make like a clip of everyone saying, go to office hours. Waiting
It's
for you.
unbelievable. You go to office hours, ask anything. It doesn't even have to be about the course.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can even build a community with the other students that are maybe at the office hours or doing drop-in sessions, things like that. So.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say about the advantage of doing some kind of work in a lab or doing some kind of research is that you learn that, you know, knowledge is always being made. It's not just facts packaged up and put in a textbook that never change. Those facts got there by people doing research and changing other people's minds, and it's a real jockeying. So science, just like English literature, is knowledge in the making.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there's lots of opportunities for research at U of T, I think more than I've seen in like a lot of the other institutions I've worked at. So, so definitely a great place to be if you're a student.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing a little bit of insight into your role and your experience. We typically end our UC Daily interviews with a few fun rapid fire questions. So we're
Okay.
going to wrap up this interview with asking you a few. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna get started by what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, licorice.
Licorice. Okay. What is your all-time favorite like happy place spot?
Oh gosh, all time happy place spot. Well, I love our cottage.
Yeah.
I love our cottage.
Nice. Okay. Cottage. It's calming. It sounds like a calming place. So
Has it been commonplace? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What is your favorite book?
Um, I have so many favorite books. I just finished, well, not just, 3 months ago, I finished Lincoln in the Bardo, which I thought was a fabulous book. Not just about the story, which is amazingly well crafted and interesting in the way it's told, but also in its metaphors. It's really a metaphor for human behavior, and it's a wonderful book. I loved Lincoln in the Bardo.
Well, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my most recent one. But I think my all-time favorite, most moving book ever was called Life and Fate. Um, Life and Fate, and it's about the occupation of Stalingrad during World War II. And it's like it is a Russian novel from the perspective of a lot of different, a sprawling, actually Jewish family. And it's just unbelievably moving and beautifully written.
nice. Okay. And what was the other one? Oh, yeah. What is your favorite outdoor summer activity?
I love to swim.
Swim. Nice. All right.
Yeah, I love to swim. And you give me a body of water and I go swimming. And in fact, right now I'm in New Brunswick, and I've been here since November. And in the middle of November, I went swimming in the St. Croix River. And as I looked up, there were 2 sea otters looking at me. And I just thought that was transformative.
That's really cute. Yeah. Was
Yeah.
it cold? Was the water cold?
Yeah, it was really cold.
Really cold.
I needed to take a really hot bath for a long time.
Brave. You're very brave. Um, and then last question, what is your favorite place at the University of Toronto campus, or a good, like maybe a hidden gem if you know a spot to be?
Well, my favorite spot is my lab. I love being around the students.
Yeah.
If you want a spot that's not my lab, I love it in the spring when the cherry blossoms are out in front of the library. I think that's really beautiful.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a toss up between that. Also, I love Philosopher's Walk, between, how it cuts between Harvard and Bloor.
Okay, I'm not very familiar. I started in March virtually, so
Virtually, okay.
but I will. You know what? That I'm gonna take a note of that and go
It's
visit
pretty nice. Philosopher's Walk is pretty nice. But I never, yeah, but my favorite spot is in my lab.
in your lab. Yeah. Okay, so that wraps up our interview. Thank you so much, Dr. Einstein, for joining us today. It was a pleasure hearing all about your experiences, and I'm sure our students took so much from this interview. So thank you again.
You're very welcome, and thank you for asking me. I always like to talk with students, and also I have a, you know, I feel a strong affiliation with University College, so I'm really happy to do this. So thank you so much.